Amritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalamashapaham Sharavanamangalam Shrimadatam Bhuyananti Hurirajana. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly living souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Before we start, I wanted to give an update on our Swami Brahmarupanandaji. He returned from India just over a week ago and wasn't feeling very well, and then developed some symptoms. We tested him for COVID. He tested positive. And then he started getting some pain in his rib area and a cough and everything. So we had him admitted into the hospital, and they've been treating him there. His oxygen level was quite low. It's much better today. We were worried about that. That's much better. The heart rate is a little high, and some other sodium, potassium things are a little bit off. But as of today, he's doing much better. He may be in the hospital another couple of days. Then they'll put him in the rehab because he hasn't moved at all. He's very weak and everything, and no solid food or even liquid at all. Everything through IV. No, not a feeding tube, just through IV. But I saw him today, and he was cheerful. He seemed better. Last night was worrisome, but he seemed to do better. So that's he can't have visitors, and really can't take phone calls. So if anybody really needs an update, they can check with the center. Last Friday, I hope some of you got to see, we had the introduction to our big program, the concluding weekend of the 25th anniversary of the center. And so we missed our gospel class last week. We'll be continuing. We're on the chapter Rules for Householders and Monks. This is page 408. The date is March 23rd, 1884. And Sri Ramakrishna is in his room. Rakal, Ram, and some other devotees are there. Let's see if anybody else can. And Sri Ramakrishna was talking about these people of bygone generations, what tremendous faith they had. And then even talking about his father. When my father chanted the name of Raghuveer, his chest would turn crimson. This also happened to me. When I saw the cows at Vrindavan returning from the pasture, I was transported into a divine mood, and my body became red. Very strong was the faith of the people in those days. One hears that God used to dance, then taking the form of Kali, while the devotee clapped his hands, keeping time. Yeah, I don't know else how to explain how people had visions and with absolute faith in those days. Of course, with Takur's mother and father, that's a special kind of thing. But even in general, how they wouldn't question it at all. If some deity would appear, a dream or something, they would assume 100% real. So all the question of the almost childlike faith, which Takur praised so much, we can't fake it. We can't learn to have it. This is something that I think it comes with being born at a certain era and in a certain atmosphere, village especially. Growing up like that, it's just these things are not questioned. Modern day people can't expect to have that type of faith. We can have our own type of faith, a little different, of course, but Takur praised that people who were very simple had that simple type of faith. It's a very wonderful thing, those who have it. A Hatha yogi was staying in the hut at the Panchavati. In those days, the wandering sadhus, anyone who came, they would have a place. They would be given some place to stay, and they could get their food there. So many sadhus passed through, and poor people could come and take food at the Dakshineswar Kali temple. So a Hatha yogi was staying in the hut at the Panchavati. Ram Prasanna, the son of Krishna Kishore of Aryadha, and several other men had become his devotees. The yogi needed 25 rupees a month for his milk and opium. Yeah, this was I don't know. Opium in those days was half considered a medicine for stomach treatments and things. And 25 rupees was a lot of money. Yeah, this is why this will be a little recurring theme here. That who will give so much money, and any sadhu who wants money is not people aren't anxious to go to that sadhu. That'll be a little bit of theme here. This is for a whole month. Yeah, you think Takur got what, 7 rupees a month? Of course, he had his own room and everything and food, but still, it's a lot of money. So Ram Prasanna had requested Sri Ramakrishna to speak to his devotees about the yogi and get some money. Asking Sri Ramakrishna to get money for somebody else is a funny thing, but Thakur, he had no pride that way. Abhiman. So they want me to ask, I'll ask. The master said to several devotees, a Hatha yogi has come to the Panchavati. Go and visit him. See what sort of man he is. He's not recommending him or anything, but he likes this Ram Prasanna, and he doesn't want to just refuse him. A young man of 27 or 28, known as Takur Dada, entered the room with a few friends and saluted the master. He lived at Baranagar and was the son of a Brahmin Pandit. He was practicing the Kutakata. This is a recital of stories from religious books with appropriate. You've heard these things. That it's very, very nice. That there'll be some narration, then there'll be some song, then there'll be some hymn that's chanted, a whole like a one-man show, that they can give a whole lecture like that with a nice singing and everything. It's very beautiful. In order to earn money to meet his family's expenses. At one time, he had been seized with the spirit of renunciation and had gone away from his family. Even now, he practiced spiritual discipline at home. Master, have you come on foot? Where do you live? Dada, yes, sir, I've walked from home. I live in Baranagar. Master, have you come here for any particular purpose? Dada, I've come here to visit you. I pray to God, but why do I suffer now and then from worries? For a few days, I feel very happy. Why do I feel restless afterwards? Does anybody have that problem? Is there anybody who doesn't have that problem? Yeah, this is what it means to live in the world. We have our good days and we have our bad days, and this we have to expect. And there'll be all sorts of problems that everybody has to face. Some are blessed with good health. It seems like they can do anything, stay up all night and eat as much food as they want, and they have good health. Other people, they fall sick all the time. But generally, there'll be some health problems sooner or later, and there'll be some family problems, there'll be some social problems, and when everything is fine, the mind doesn't cooperate. For no reason, we're just not in a good mood. People are so susceptible. This idea of mood, this is a very interesting subject. How we get just covered with a mood, the gloomy mood, something that it just pervades everything, all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, everything. And just no matter what happens, we're just not very happy with anything. I often quote Swami Atmajnanananda. He used to say, if a small child is in a bad mood, and you give it candy, it'll cry. If it's in a good mood, you give it a slap and it'll laugh. So mostly our happiness and sadness and whatever our reaction is, it depended more on our mood than anything else. We're in a good mood, we can put up with anything. We're in a bad mood, even people try to be nice to us. Oh, how are you today? Why do you keep asking how am I? Can't you see I don't feel good? Again, our Swami Swanandaji, the poor man, he was so sick at the end. And he said, everybody calls me, Maharaj, how are you? What can I say? He said, if that's all you're calling, don't call me. I'm a sick man. What can I say? So everybody is subject to moods and ups and downs. Those who aren't are the ones we consider absolute saints. Did Sri Ramakrishna ever get annoyed with anybody or anything? Satuhai. We'll read Viraktohai, that he would get a little bit annoyed with someone, would snap at somebody or something occasionally. But he also had a human mind. He emphasized that very much. He emphasized that more, I think, than the God coming and revealing himself in human form. It was more when God comes, he comes with that's a little bit of veil of Maya. And how many times he mentioned that how Rama wept for Sita. So even Rama, if he can weep, that means that this mind is just such an unpredictable thing. And this ego is so easily bruised that really it's very hard to have any contentment in life unless we know how to control it or we know how to bypass it somehow. So this is a great challenge in life. So he's asking a question as if he's the only one. This is a problem. Many people feel that. They'll ask you, why do I have good days and bad? As if they're the only ones. Sometimes it's helpful just to realize that everybody has the same problem. Can I quote Swami Swanandaji again? Yeah, he had such wonderful ways of explaining things. He says, you wake up one morning and throat is sore and you have fever and you feel horrible and you're thinking, I'm so sick and everything. Then you read in the paper, thousands of people are suffering from flu, the Asiatic flu. Immediately you feel a little bit better. You're not the only one. Everyone else is suffering. So if we know we're all in the same boat, it helps a little bit. So this is a question. For a few days, I feel very happy. Why do I feel restless afterwards? Master, I see. Things have not been fitted quite exactly. The machine works smoothly if the mechanic fits the cogs of the wheels correctly. Nice answer. In your case, there is an obstruction somewhere. Now, we can say that Takur will give some general answer for everybody, but we know Takur had a special power of insight. And I don't know, it sounds like this is the first time he's meeting this, Takur Dada. But anyhow, he had that ability to understand what's going on inside of a person without having to ask too many questions or anything. So this will be something especially for this Takur Dada. Dada, yes, sir. That must be so. Master, are you initiated? Dada, yes, sir. Master, do you have faith in your mantra? Now, there's not too much, this conversation stops a little bit here. But what can we glean from this answer? I think what we get is that we should do our spiritual practice. That this is the best way to avoid the ups and downs of the mind, to do our spiritual practice, to get connected with that internal reality that is ever present and has no ups and downs. If we grab a hold of that, then we're more or less safe. Takur gives that nice illustration that you can swing round and round and round if you're holding on to a pillar. You won't fall down. Otherwise, you will fall. So without saying anything, do spiritual practice. The first thing he says, are you initiated? A friend of Takur Dada said that the latter could sing well. The master asked him to sing. If anybody could sing, Takur would ask him to sing. He loved to hear music. Takur Dada sang, I shall become a yogi and dwell in love's mountain cave. I shall be lost in yoga beside the fountainhead of bliss. I shall appease my hunger for knowledge with the fruit of truth. I shall worship the feet of God with the flower of dispassion. A little bit like our Mendel worship. I shall not seek a well to slake the burning thirst of my heart, but I shall draw the water of peace into the jar of my soul. Drinking the glorious nectar of thy blessed lotus feet, I shall both laugh and dance and weep and sing on the heights of joy. Master, what a nice song. Fountainhead of bliss, fruit of truth, laugh and dance and weep and sing. Your song tastes very sweet to me. Why should you worry? Now, this really, if we try to get to the heart of why we have ups and downs, this and that, most of it is worry. Most of it is some type of anxiety. What will happen? What does that mean? That means lack of surrender and lack of sharanagati. If we have that whatever happens is for the best, or if we have the titiksha, whatever happens, I can bear. What can affect me? I'm the self. I'm the witness of everything. If we have that, then we'll be very firm and strong. So this spiritual practice, this getting connected to that reality within, it makes the mind strong. Then we can put up with all different types of problems and difficulties in the world. Takur will talk about it a little bit here. Yeah, he'll return to the Takur Dada's question. Pleasure and pain are inevitable in the life of the world. One suffers now and then from a little worry and trouble. A man living in a room full of soot cannot avoid being a little stained. Now, sometimes Takur gives this as the example of the difference between a sadhu life and the family life or the householder life. He says that a householder, there's no chance of avoiding living in the world, having a job, family. There's no chance of avoiding a little bit of this contamination of the worldliness, this soot, that way. Sadhu, if he can live in some environment away from everything, may be free a little bit, but the mind is still the problem. So if we can get over this anxiety and worry, and how do we do it? One thing is we have to be sensible people, and we have to make provisions, householders especially, make provisions. Somebody can say that I'm constantly worried about what will happen to me in my retirement years. Another person says, I have a savings account. I have an IRA. I put money away. I know that I'll be safe in those years. Practical type of thing. Takur says, even for the sadhu, that the one sadhu, he's roaming about without worry. The other sadhu says, oh, you're going all around. Where did you keep your things? I first found my room. I put it there and I locked it up under key. I don't have to worry. I can just go about freely and everything. So one thing is to be very practical as far as possible to eliminate all of the practical problems that may come up. Now, that may be 5-10%. We don't know. Things will come up regardless. But to that extent, to be sensible people and to look after our health a little bit, look after our financial condition, all of these things, this is helpful. So this is number one. The main thing is to understand that whatever happens will happen and we'll survive. If worst comes to worst, we won't survive. What does that mean? We're going to die anyhow one day. Huh? Nobody's going to live forever. And if we really believe that this is just a little bit of a 2-day vacation, not a very sunny vacation, and that we can get to go back to our real home, then we won't care too much. We get too attached. Huh? We get too attached to this world, which is really not such a wonderful place. It's not such a wonderful place. Now, going into the hospital, I went to see Swami Brahmarupananji the last couple of days, going to the hospital. How these nurses do it day and night. They're with people who can barely breathe, and whether they survive through the night is questionable sometimes. And they see and how many, especially with this COVID time, how many got completely burned out and just couldn't do it anymore. But yeah, this life in the world is not such an easy thing. So we have to have tremendous inner strength, which comes from spiritual practice, comes from faith, comes from surrender. And this titiksha is a wonderful thing. The Holy Mother had that tremendous statement that she said that the greatest virtue that anyone can have is forbearance. And the greatest treasure that anyone can have is contentment. And one comes directly from the other. If we have that forbearance, we can just put up with anything. Whatever our attitude, either in Mother's will or my karma, whatever our attitude, and then we'll have a certain amount of contentment. People who like this karma idea, they can say, yeah, what can I do? It's my karma. That I made my own bed, I have to sleep in it. I'm not going to blame anybody else. Others will say, oh, yeah, I renounced everything to Mother, and now it's all in her hands. Whatever she does is for the best. I'll accept it that way, just like the kitten. Huh? So different attitudes to take. But really, this idea that one suffers now and then from a little worry and trouble, that, yeah, this worry and trouble, this is the meaning of life. Huh? What is the meaning? Samsara. What is the meaning of this life? It means suffering. We're not so pessimistic as some Buddhist philosophers and things, but still, not that everything is suffering and misery, but as a part of life, we have to accept. Swamiji says in one place that there'll always be an equal amount happiness and sadness, and then he says, but probably more misery than happiness. Of course, it so much depends on the mind. That's the other thing. Dada, please tell me what I should do now. Master, chant the name of a Hari morning and evening, clapping your hands. Now, Takur would give this advice sometimes, and we think that anybody could give that advice. Huh? Nothing very special to that. This are the Hari Maharaj, that he was asking about how to get rid of lust. And Thakur says, repeat it in Hari in the morning. He said, what? This is a holy man. This is the best advice he can give. But he said he did it and it worked. So anyhow, if Sri Ramakrishna says to do it, it's different from somebody else saying to do it. There's some force and power behind it. But what it really means is dive deep within, develop this inner life. The only way of getting through this life unscathed is by having a very strong inner life. That has to be the most important thing. What happens in the external world, it is secondary. Because everything is the mind. We live in the mind. Everything is the mind. All experiences outside, we experience in the mind. Not that they're not taking place, but everything's experienced in the mind. So it depends on the state of the mind, how we take these things, how they affect us. It depends on the state of the mind more than the external circumstance. That's the most important thing. That's why we see some of these really great souls, how they're unshaken in the midst of anything, no matter what happens, especially their own physical health. unperturbed. That, life is like that. The body is like that. It'll break down and everything. You just accept it. Huh? I'm the self. How does that affect me really? If we have that type of attitude. So chant the name of Hari morning and evening, clapping your hands. Come once more when my arm is healed a bit. Yeah, this is the period, not still, when he's trying to get over that broken arm. Mahimacharan entered the room and saluted the master. We've met him before many times. He considers himself a great pandit. He's a little bit of a egotistical person, but sincere in his own way. And Takur likes him. Takur liked all of these slightly oddball people. So Takur is always nice to him and everything, but he knows that he considers himself a little bit of a intellectual. Sri Ramakrishna said to him, Mahimacharan, he has sung a nice song. Please sing it again. Takur Dada repeated the song. Master to Mahima, please recite that verse, the one about devotion to Hari. Now, Takur has him repeat this many times. We go through the whole gospel, we see on several different occasions, he'll ask him to repeat that. Why? The Sanskrit of it is not very interesting. And I don't find it such a beautiful verse or anything. But Takur likes the sentiment, and he likes to give this. He knows Mahimacharan gets a little puffed up. He feels happy if he can do all of these, so he does it. There's another. There was another instance where they're talking, and this Mahimacharan, he's saying he doesn't really care much for devotion and everything like that. He's a real jnani, thinks of himself as a real jnani. And somebody, Naren maybe, one of them said, but you always recite that verse for Shravi. He says, he asked me to recite it, so I recite it. As if it's not really his inner attitude. Anyhow, he's a funny character. There are a lot of funny characters in Thakur's Leela. What need is there of penance if God is worshipped with love? What is the use of penance if God is not worshipped with love? What need is there of penance if God is seen within and without? What is the use of penance if God is not seen within and without? Then Thakur will ask him to recite a second thing. These two things we find many times. Master, recite that part also. Obtained from him the love of God. Mahima recited. O Brahman, O my child, cease from practicing further penances. Hasten to Shankara, the ocean of heavenly wisdom. Obtain from him the love of God, the pure love praised by devotees, which snaps in twain the shackles that bind you to the world. Master, yes, Shankara will bestow the love of God. Shankara means Shiva. Mahima, one who is free from bondage is the eternal Shiva. Master, shame, hatred, fear, hesitation, these are the shackles. We call it the different passions. What do you say, Mahima? Yes, sir. And also the desire to conceal and shrinking before praise. Master, there are two signs of knowledge. First, an unshakable buddhi. Buddhi, we sometimes make this distinction between manas and buddhi. It's not a very strong distinction. We can say just a very strong mind. It's a mind that's not so susceptible to the external circumstances and effects. This means the very inner strength of mind, something like that. So two signs of knowledge. First, an unshakable buddhi, no matter how many sorrows, afflictions, dangers, and obstacles one may be faced with, one's mind does not undergo any change. This is a sign. This is our sthita prajna. This is the sign of the sage of steady wisdom. How they're just not moved. Kotastha. We have this phrase in Gita that just standing firm like a mountain, unmovable. And this idea of being stuck with like the anvil. We'll get that here. How they have this huge hammer, this blacksmith, and They'll put the iron in the fire, and they'll put it there, and they'll just bang on it, and it won't move. With that tremendous force of that huge mallet or hammer, or whatever, the anvil won't move. This is the example that they have for that type of mind that is not affected by external things. We can't expect to have that 100%. We're trying to reach a level where we're not affected so much. One of our swamis once said that what we're trying to have is a buffer. A buffer is something which will absorb the shock. We'll still feel some shock, but it'll absorb most of it. This is what we try to do. Ultimately, of course, we want to be completely free from all of this, but at least have that spiritual strength within, so that we're not knocked off our feet by when these tragedies come. So first, an unshakable buddhi, no matter how many sorrows, afflictions, dangers, and obstacles one may be faced with, one's mind does not undergo any change. It is like the blacksmith's anvil, which receives constant blows from the hammer and still remains unshaken. And second, manliness. Now, this isn't a male, female type of thing. This just means strength. Swamiji himself, you remember that great statement? He said, the older I get, the more it seems to me that everything is a question of manliness. So again, it's not a gender-related issue. It means courage and strength, and not wavering, not having that weakness. Swamiji couldn't bear weakness. He wanted us to be strong. So this is the second. Very strong grit. If lust and anger injure a man, he must renounce them once for all. If a tortoise once tucks in its limbs, it won't put them out again, though you may cut it into 4 pieces. To Takur Dada and the others. There are 2 kinds of renunciation, intense and feeble. Feeble renunciation is a slow process. One moves in a slow rhythm. Intense renunciation is like the sharp edge of a razor. It cuts the bondage of Maya easily and at once. This vairagya is a very special thing that is very often misunderstood, very often taken as some negative thing, that it simply means that we don't feel much attraction for the world, a little bit of dispassion or lack of interest in worldly things. This real vairagya, what Takur is talking about, is a tremendous force. A tremendous force. I often think of the Kathopanishad when Nachiketa, it says that this Shraddha entered into him. This vairagya also can enter into people. And those who take to monastic life, very often it comes because of this vairagya. It's a very strong type of feeling that unbearable to live in this world, that have to get out somehow. That longing, this vairagya and vyakulata have to be understood together. There's a tremendous longing to escape somehow. Takur, he uses very strong language sometimes, that to someone who has this vairagya, this world is like a blazing forest fire. And he says, even one's own relatives seem like venomous black cobras. He uses very strong language that way. So this vairagya, intense vairagya, it consumes a person. Most of the monks have a little bit of that at some time in their life. That it becomes a very strong type of thing. Now, does it last throughout a whole lifetime, that type of vairagya and that type of vyakulata, that tremendous restless longing for God? Everyone is different, all different cases. I was thinking about this today, that we get established in it but it's impossible for that blazing fire to continue unless we have our God realization. If it's so strong that everything gets burned up, we have that realization. Otherwise, spiritual life, they say it's not a it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We impossible to have that type of burning renunciation throughout the whole lifetime. If we do, then we'll have some type of realization. Otherwise, it provides an unshakable ground for spiritual life. It may not be the blazing fire, but that heat will remain there. Anyhow, everybody needs a little bit of this vairagya. It's not just for the monks. There's a little bit of this, and we have to understand a tremendous longing to break out of the shackles of ignorance, the tremendous longing to have some type of God realization or to know our real nature. Otherwise, this very mild type of renunciation, well, I can do it tomorrow, no rush. It doesn't amount to too much. It's better than nothing, of course. But this vairagya, we have to understand it's really tremendous power if we really have that type of intense renunciation. And if we look at the lives of all the great saints, this is one of the things that will stand out. Look at the life of Buddha. We read about that the day that he gave up everything, that there was some, I guess because of the birth of the child, that there was tremendous celebration in the palace, and singing and dancing and drinking and eating and everything. And when he went in, he saw that there were people lying on the ground, drunk, and others exhausted, and all of this. And he said it was just like a vision of hell with demons and everything. It's just unbearable. He had to leave. He had no choice. That's that intense vairagya. And in his case, even for someone like that, in his case, that it remained. But how long did it take? Was it 5 years, something like that? Or anybody remember that he went from one group to another group and finally had his enlightenment? Satubai? 6 years. 6 years. Yeah. So to maintain that tremendous vairagya for 6 years is no joke. Only these special souls can do that. Otherwise, it's not that we lose it, but at least I think for monks, that once finally joining and everything, it's quenched a little bit, satisfied a little bit, but we have to make sure that we don't lose it completely. There's one big problem is that we feel that once we've taken sannyasa, we've completed the job and don't have to do anything. It's a very great problem in spiritual life. But this vairagya, and it can come from all different things. It can come out of great tragedy. It can come the death of a loved one, all sorts of things. You remember our, what was his name? Govinda Roy, this Christian sadhu who came, Quaker, who came to Sri Ramakrishna. On the day that his brother was to be married, that everyone was there, and they have the big tent set up and everything, and one of the posts broke, something like that, and it fell down and died instantly on the day of his marriage. Something, and from that day onward, this vairagya came. Then what is the purpose of life in this world and everything? So it can come from some type of tragedy in life. It can come from seeing a great soul. We know, again, the life of Buddha, that it came because of 4 visions. That he saw a very sick man, that he saw a very old man, he saw a dead man, and then he saw a young monk, face beaming with the joy, not looking one way or the other. All of these brought that tremendous vairagya. So there are 2 types of renunciation. intense, and feeble. Feeble renunciation is a slow process. One moves in a slow rhythm. Intense renunciation is like the sharp edge of a razor. It cuts the bondage of Maya easily and at once. One farmer labors for days to bring water from the lake to his field, but his efforts are futile because he has no grit. Another farmer, after laboring for 2 or 3 days, takes a vow and says, I will bring water into my field today, and not till then will I go home. He puts aside all thought of his bath or his meal. He labors the whole day and feels great joy when, in the evening, he finds water entering his field with a murmuring sound. Then he goes home and says to his wife, Now give me some oil, I shall take my bath. After finishing his bath and his meal, he lies down to sleep with a peaceful mind. Takur tells this story several different times. How he even says during the day, his wife sends the daughter, Come, take your food, you can finish later. And he said, Get away from me. And then the wife comes, said, Get out of here, you crazy woman, don't you know we'll starve? And then finally he finishes the job and content. Generally, he talks about here, he doesn't tell that, but he says a second farmer had the same situation. The wife says, Come, why work so hard? You can do it tomorrow. He said, Okay. And he went home, and they never got water in the field, and they suffered from famine. A certain woman said to her husband, So and so has developed a spirit of great dispassion for the world, but I don't see anything of the sort in you. He has 16 wives. That'll give us dispassion for the world. How does one have 16 wives? Anyhow, he has 16 wives. He is giving them up one by one. The husband, with a towel on his shoulder, was going to the lake for his bath. He said to his wife, You are crazy. He won't be able to give up the world. Is it ever possible to renounce bit by bit? I can renounce. Look, here I go. He didn't stop even to settle his household affairs. He left home just as he was, the towel on his shoulder, and went away. That is intense renunciation. Now, what about the case of somebody who says, Let me work for a few years and save a little bit of money and look after the family, this and that, and then I'll renounce, and they go ahead and they do it? What about that person?
Responsible.
Good, responsible person. Absolutely. Or Kumar Maharaj, he did that just for the sake of his family. He worked a few extra years. He joined a little bit late, just so he wouldn't have that worry and anxiety, so that they had some money. And then with a free, clear mind, could renounce it.
Because there's a much better place.
And he's in a much better place, yes. Here or there? Here. Yeah. So
Easy to renounce.
yeah, easy to renounce. So there's certain rules to renounce. One, and in those days, you have to remember that this sannyasa came after the householder life, and there were different rules and different theories. One was that really the first 3 stages are the only 3 stages. There was a certain school, this sannyasa really isn't considered to be part of a dharmic type of life. That you brahmacharya, and then there's garhastya state, and then vanaprastha state. And then there's another group that said that you can take the sannyasa only after going through all of those. That it's necessary to be married, have a family, and have property, and do all of that. And then you give it to the children, and you go into the forest. Then you take the sannyasa. Then there was the other theory that you can go directly from brahmacharya to sannyasa. This is what we do, of course. But the theory that is generally accepted, for the householder to take the sannyasa, generally it was felt that he should do it only if his wife wouldn't suffer, financially at least, monetarily, and that there should be after the birth of a son. And this is what happened in the case of Swamiji's grandfather. If Swamiji's grandfather had renounced the world before giving birth to a son, then where would Swamiji be? Now, he could have been born in another family, of course, but because he had that son was Swamiji's own father. And that's why Swamiji didn't have any aunts or uncles. Was that the only? Satyabai, do you know? That is only on his father's side. Just after the birth of that one son. Yeah. But then we have this one verse from one Upanishad, Jabal Upanishad, not such an important Upanishad, but this is Yadahar Eva Virijet, Tadahar Eva Pravirijet. On that very day when you feel that intense vairagya, then you can leave no matter what. Then there's no niyam, there are no rules or anything, if it's that intense. But if it's not, see, Takur had this hadith, he had other people that they had their family. And sometimes he would say that, okay, if they really want to renounce, they have to provide for the family. But in the case of those who this renunciation is so intense that they're almost helpless, then somehow they're allowed to bypass some of these other rules. There's another kind of renunciation called Markata Vairagya, monkey renunciation. A man, harrowed by distress at home, puts on an ochre robe and goes away to Benares. For many days, he does not send home any news of himself. Then he writes to his people, "Don't be worried about me. I've got a job here." So this is the renunciation can be a type of escapism. Can't find a good job, this and that. In our order, in India, which is a little bit different nowadays, but the standard of living now in our order is quite good. If somebody really doesn't care about being able to move about very freely and doesn't have much interest in getting a job or having a good career and wants to be able to get all of his meals and a place to stay without worry and everything, join the order. But this is not the purpose. This is that Markata Vairagya. That and they find something better, they'll leave because there's no renunciation, real renunciation behind it. Just some type of convenience, you could say. There's always trouble in family life. Now remember, Takur is talking to the men here, so the women don't get offended. The wife may be disobedient. Perhaps the husband earns only 20 rupees a month. He hasn't the means to perform the rice-eating ceremony for his baby. He cannot educate his son. The house is dilapidated. The roof leaks, and he hasn't the money to repair it. So he renounces the world. No, this is not the right thing. But just talking about the problems in life. Then Takur says, therefore, when the youngsters come here, I ask them whether they have anyone at home. Now, this means, because the youngsters means the young boys who will become monks. There was no thought at that time the girls will come up and they'll renounce the world at that time. So it was the responsibility of the son to look after the parents. So Takur sometimes says that if one has that good karma, then perhaps elder brother is there to look after the parents. He doesn't have to worry about that. But this was always a burden on the family in the joint family situation, where the parents could only be able to retire if the son is there, living at home, who will look after the household and pay all the expenses and everything. If there's a daughter, she'll live with her husband's family. So this was always a question. Now, what about cases where somebody is absolutely qualified to become a monk, but there's no one else at home? Then absolutely qualified. Then look at Swamiji's condition. It was his responsibility. His brothers were both young, much younger at that time, but there was no question. Takur would not say to him, yes, get married, look after the family, this and that, that's your duty, responsibility. He had a greater mission in life. So it all depends on the individual case. I remember a little personal experience. I went to see Swami Saradeshanandaji, Gopesh Maharaj. This was before I joined, and I went to get his blessings to join. And he only asked me one question. Is there anyone to look after your mother? He didn't say parents. He didn't say father or anything. Is there anyone to look after your mother? Will your mother suffer if you don't? I said, yes, the family, they don't have any problems that way. Then he said, good. So, yeah, our order is a little bit different that way. There are several cases where some joined and then mother got sick or some problem at home. And the seniors, direct disciples even sent them home to look after them. And then they came back and joined again. Now, this is a wonderful thing that, especially for widows, for the mothers. Yeah, in India, maybe not so much now, but there used to be quite a large age difference between the husband and the wife. Very often the wife could be, at least 10 years younger. So that it was much more common for the mother to be the widow, for the husband to die earlier, and then who to look after. So we have now, I think, a couple of different places, and I know people have raised money, especially for the mothers of sadhus, to retire and everything. Where were you thinking? Benares, I think. In Calcutta now, also. Yeah. Bangladesh, they were trying also that way. So it's a very nice idea because the mother sacrificed losing a son. So at least in their old age, they have some place and everything. Yeah.
I know the case of a brahmachari. His father had died when he was still young.
Yeah.
And he and his mother, they were all that was left of the
They
family.
can't hear. Can you come up? No, just you don't have to show your face so they can hear.
The women should not hear.
Oh, okay. Then
Then
quickly.
he decided to leave home and join the.
This is a young man who wanted to become a monk, and what happened? His father died young.
Father died when
Yeah.
he was still a small boy.
Small boy.
So all he had was mother, and all the mother had was this boy.
So just mother and son.
Yes.
Nobody else. Yeah.
And then after finishing his college education, he decided to join the order.
Then after college, wanted to join the order.
His mother was.
Mother, of course, was a terrible blow to the mother.
And he said, she said, "What will I do now?"
Mother said, "What will I do now?"
You also become a sadhu.
Oh, he said, you can also read out. Yeah. No, this is, sometimes it takes tremendous strength of mind because family can put tremendous pressure. In India, everyone is very happy to see somebody else's son become a monk. Somebody else's son to become a monk. Yeah. Nobody wants their own son to become a monk in India. Yeah. I know cases where even they've had lawsuits. That the family will have a lawsuit that my son has been brainwashed by the order and they have to release him and everything. What tremendous strength of mind for the son to just say, no, I'm not going home no matter what. So sometimes it can be like that. So Takur, those who were the chosen ones that he recognized as his real Parshadas, his real inner circle, future monastics, then it wasn't such an issue. But the others who would come, he would want to make sure that no one else will suffer in the family and everything. And is it real renunciation? That was the question. Therefore, when the youngsters come here, I ask them whether they have anyone at home to Mahima. Why should the householders renounce the world? Now, we have to remember that Takur, he'll give the advice that's appropriate for the person he's talking to. This Mahima is somebody who wouldn't be interested in renunciation at that old age and everything. But also, there's a question of those who have already taken to the married life. They've already accepted the responsibilities. They've taken the vows of marriage and everything. What advantage is it for them to renounce, and what allows them to be free from those vows? They're a very big question. Some of the greatest monks of our order were married, and just gave up. Our Swami Jagadanandaji, who translated the Lila Prasanga into the Great Master. He's a wonderful story. He was a professor. He taught philosophy and was teaching some class on the Upanishads. It was in Sylhet. And he was saying something like, some of these ideas one cannot really understand unless one renounces everything. And one of the students said to him, but you're teaching us and you haven't renounced. That did it. And he said, yes, this is true. And then he left home and everything and became considered one of the great monks of our order. Swami Jagadananda. This Vairagya is something. You know the story of this Lala Babu. Huh? The Lala Babu, he was a dhobi. What did they washerman? Yeah. And they have to, they make some type of ash. They have to burn some type of banana plant, something that makes some type of ash that they use to wash the clothes, something like that. And he hadn't done it. It was a little bit late. And his daughter said, Baba, you haven't yet burned. And the word is the same as vasana, something like that, that is getting late and you haven't burned up. So he took it this other is now your life is going by and still you have these desires that you haven't given up. And taking this in that way, then he renounced, became a saintly type of person. So what triggers things is we never know what will trigger something. So let me try to finish this paragraph. Therefore, when the youngsters come here, I ask them whether they have anyone at home to Mahima. Why should householders renounce the world? What great troubles the wandering monks pass through. The wife of a certain man said to him, you want to renounce the world? Why? You will have to beg morsels from 8 different homes, but here you get all your food at one place. Isn't that nice? Now, we're lucky we get all of our food in one place and we can still be monks. But there was a very interesting incident in the life of Holy Mother. Many of the young monks of the order would go to Holy Mother or others and complain, we came to spend our time in spiritual practice and we have to spend so much time in doing the work of the order. It may be office work, maybe in a hospital. They would complain like that. And she would say, Baba, yes, that you're living a nice, easy life. You have a beautiful place to stay. You get all your meals and everything. You want to lead a life of just spiritual practice, very good. Go live under a tree. Be Gachtola Sadhu, if you want that. Otherwise, you can get your food in one place and do all of that. Then you have to do some service. He was very practical about that.
So were these monks complaining that they had to do seva?
Mostly that they felt it not getting as much time as they liked for their meditation, this and that. Yeah, some, especially the early days, some had to work day and night in hospitals and things, and there was a shortage of help and everything. So really, unless the monks in that situation looked upon seva as spiritual practice, and if they came with this idea that they wanted to spend long hours in meditation and everything, then a little bit of yeah, disappointment would be there. Even today, we'll have some young monks who join, and they'll reach a point where they say, "Really, I want to spend all of my time in spiritual practice," and they'll go off on their own, live in Uttarkashi. And good monks, they may be good monks. They may be, some of them may just be lazy, but we've seen a few of them were very good monks. Just cut out for a different type of monastic life. Our life is a life where we have to value service as spiritual practice. We have to look upon that as a privilege in our particular order. You want to renounce the world? Why? You will have to beg morsels from 8 different homes. But here you get all your food at one place. Isn't that nice? So he's praising householder life. Sometimes he talks about, we'll get it here, about the monk is like somebody fighting in an open field, and the householder is like within a fort. I'll close her. I remember a nice story told by Saint Teresa of Avila. She was talking about the experience of renouncing and becoming a nun, and she said that before that, it was as if she was someone trying to reach her home at night, late at night, dark at night, and someone's following her. And she thinks it may be a thief, maybe a murderer. She doesn't know who it is. She's walking faster and faster, running and running and running. Then finally she gets home, and she opens the door, and she gets in, slams the door, and locks it, and feels she feels completely at peace. Then she realizes that she locked the thief inside the house with her. So there's a sadhu life that there's no escaping, because everything is internal within the mind. So that was that realization that the sadhu life, it is a bit in the open field. We don't have some of the protection and everything. We have to be 100% vigilant in our spiritual practice. Anyhow, that story. Okay, let us stop here. This is page 411. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukam Bhatur Vikraham Vai Yeshavataram Parameshamedikam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namama. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.